Yeah, whatever we can get.
Local press.
I'm at the campaign.
Oh, wait a second.
Hold on.
Hi.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You can get just I want to see
I'm
at the
Andrew's
table.
press secretary. Andrew's
Oh,
press
oh,
secretary.
okay. Okay. Bill? Yeah, no, just wait a second.
Yeah, sure.
Local press coming through.
Julia coming in.
With the campaign.
Concussed.
Hi.
Do you want to say something first, or we just so far anyway?
Well, thank you all for being here for this historic occasion. I've been campaigning in New Hampshire for months now. I went to high school here in the state. Every time I've been here, it's felt like a homecoming, and certainly that welcome committee outside make this official.
So, Andrew, your campaign started, honestly, just sort of as almost a footnote, but now it's certainly grown. And just talk about the path going forward to really now break through in New Hampshire, where you spent so much time. And then after you do that, could you give us a quick take on the possibility of Mike Bloomberg getting into this race?
Well, people in New Hampshire are very smart, very independent-minded. They see what's going on around them. They see that we're leading a darker future for our kids than the lives we've led as their parents, not just with an economy that's pushing more and more of our young people to the side, but also record levels of student loan debt, struggles with opiate addiction, climate change. We've left an awful mess for the next generation, and it's up to us to clean it up. And it's going to be up to the people of New Hampshire to help put the rest of the country in position to have a new way forward. Anytime I'm here in New Hampshire, the crowds get bigger, the energy's fairly well here in New Hampshire come February, I have no doubt about it. About Mike Bloomberg, I'm friendly with Mike. He was a great mayor in New York City. He's a tremendous philanthropist. I do think that he's going to have an uphill climb in the race, in part because of New Hampshire, where the people here in New Hampshire love to meet a candidate in person, take their temperature, look into their eyes, sometimes have them in their living room, and I don't believe that's going to be possible with Mike. It seems like he might have a totally different approach to the election than coming here to New Hampshire and meeting with voters, and I think that's one reason why he is going to have an uphill climb, because there are some things that money cannot buy, and you can't replace thousands of conversations in New Hampshire and in the early states with advertising. It's just not possible. So I welcome Mike into the race in the sense that he's a great American leader and has a lot to offer, but I think he's got his work cut out for him, in part because of the process here in New Hampshire.
You know, you've excited a lot of younger voters, and we've seen in many elections before that excitement out on the campaign trail, and they don't all show up. Do you think this election is going to be different, that it's going to be historic in terms of younger voters really taking part in making a difference in the outcome?
I do, and that's not any speculation. That shows up in the numbers and the early voting returns, where you see that young people realize that they need to vote and take part in the process if they're going to change things for their generation. They're very passionate and engaged about some of the biggest challenges of the day, and they know that these challenges are not going to fix themselves. So my popularity among young people is a point of real pride and excitement for me in the campaign. And I think it's going to bear tremendous fruit and have a massive impact come the primary voting days in February.
Just following up on that, oh, sorry, Holly. On the subject of young voters, you signed on to a petition from Senator Jeanne Shaheen earlier this year with regard to some new laws around voting here in New Hampshire. Could you elaborate on why you felt that was an important step to take?
We should be making it easier for young people to participate in our democracy and not harder. And so anytime you set up barriers for, let's say, college kids who might be here from another state and say, hey, we're going to make it tougher for you to vote, I think that's the wrong direction. If anything, we should be encouraging young people to participate in the democratic process. And studies have shown that the earlier your first vote is, the more likely you are to be a consistent voter throughout your lifetime. So anything we do to discourage young people from voting during their college years is a mistake, in my opinion.
You mentioned independent voters in New Hampshire. To what extent is that part of your strategy to reach out specifically to independents, and what are you doing along those lines?
That's another reason I love New Hampshire, because you all have an open primary. And so people can show up and make their voice heard in February without necessarily being a registered Democrat. If you look around the country, right now independents outnumber Democrats or Republicans by a substantial margin, and that's the case here in New Hampshire as well. I believe that independents have been waiting for a campaign that energized them and spoke to them and talked about the real problems they're seeing on their main streets and in their communities every day. And I think independents are going to come out for Andrew Yang here in New Hampshire and around the country.
So earlier this week, I got to ask you, this was fascinating. You put out an email, a tweet from Marianne Williamson, helping her as she tries to make the debate stage. It's quite an effort for her, but she's trying. And normally you don't see one candidate helping another, and I'm wondering why you do that. You said she's inspired you. How has she inspired you? And if you win the nomination, is there a Yang Williamson ticket?
One of the things most people don't realize about running for president is that you spend a lot of time with the other candidates on the road. It could be in New Hampshire or in Iowa. It could be in a union hall or a holding area before a speech. And so I've spent time with Marianne and many of the other candidates. I have text messages, exchanges with various candidates. And I'll say that after I sent this appeal on behalf of Marianne, after she asked me to, my staff asked me, would you have done this for other candidates if they'd asked? And I thought about it for a moment, and I said I would have done it for most of the other candidates if they had asked. Now, most of the candidates are not asking me, but Marianne did ask, and I looked at it and said, as a human being, I understand the position she's in, and there are many people who support my campaign that I believe like Marianne, and so it seemed like a very natural, almost collegial thing to do, because you bond with other people who are running for president. Most people don't know what it's like. I will say that if anyone thinks that running for president is somehow good for your ego, they don't understand what the process actually involves and like on the ground. I think people here in New Hampshire understand what it's like on the ground. But most Americans are like, oh, like that person's like, just trying to make themselves feel important or something. It's like, well, if you actually look at what the process is, it doesn't necessarily make you feel important a lot of the time. Certainly not all the days are like this where you have, like a giant camera crew in a crowd and 20 cameras, particularly a year and a half ago when you were just here in New Hampshire stumping to a group that could be a dozen people or smaller. And so Marianne asked, I consider her a friend. I was glad to do it.
You have just purchased $1 million in ads in Iowa, and it's really about introducing yourself, I guess, to them, because you're spending more time in New Hampshire and you've got better polling numbers here. It doesn't mention the freedom dividend. Was that by intention, or can you explain more about that?
The ad does. It says universal basic income in the ad. And it's exactly as you suggest, that our research showed that people in Iowa were more interested in learning about me, my background, my biography. And so that's what the ad focused on. I will say that it's not going to be the last ad we run in Iowa or elsewhere. And I think you can tell I love being here in New Hampshire and campaigning. You're going to see some Andrew Yang ads here on your computer or TV screen as well. One of the things I said is that the Yang Gang does not skip states. So we're going to compete in Iowa. We're going to compete here in New Hampshire and do very, very well here. We're going to compete in Nevada. We're going to compete in South Carolina, because when you're the relative outsider and newcomer presenting a new vision for the country, you can't take states off.
Mr. Yang, healthcare is a really important issue here in New Hampshire, and especially with neighboring senators Sanders and Warren supporting Medicare for all. They've recently had to answer for some tough questions regarding their plans. you support Medicare for all, but you haven't yet released your own plan. Are you getting a free pass because of that on this topic?
Well, our plan will be released shortly. I honestly think that the conversation around healthcare is missing the crucial point, which is that we're already spending 18% of GDP, almost $4 trillion, on our healthcare. And when people are looking around saying, how are you going to pay for it? We're already paying through the nose in ways big and small. It's the number one cause of personal bankruptcy, but also it's baked into our cost of really any business, because any business you interact with is paying for healthcare costs in various ways. And as someone who's run a business, I know this. And so the big difference between my approach and Senator Sanders and Senator Warren's that I disagree that everyone hates their private insurance plan. There are people that actually quite like their private insurance coverage, and the onus has to be on the government to prove that any Medicare option is superior to citizens' insurance plans in order to get people to vote with their feet and their dollars. So I have some disagreements with their approach, but I agree with the spirit, which is that we need to be providing health care for all Americans.
Will you be releasing your own plan soon, though?
Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, what is your timeline for releasing that plan? Will it include a funding mechanism, and will it also incorporate some of what you've said about opioid decriminalization and mental health?
Yes, yes, and yes. I guess you were asking for a particular timeline.
Yeah.
So, days, not weeks. Let's put it that way.
Mr. Yang, you self-proclaimed Bernie supporter in 2016. He just came out saying that he would abolish ICE if elected. Is that something that you fall in line with?
I would abolish the abuses that ICE has been associated with over the last number of months, but there are a couple of functions within ICE, including just customs enforcement, that you have to have an agency in charge of. So if you're going to abolish ICE, then you need to figure out how some of the responsibilities that we can all agree with are being enforced and executed on. So my first move would not be to abolish ICE, it would be to abolish the abuses that the American people find troubling about what ICE has been associated with.
Let's talk about expectations. Here in New Hampshire and in Iowa, where do you need to finish in both of those two first early voting states to continue on?
Well, that's one of the fun things about the Andrew Yang campaign is we need to surpass expectations. And I have a feeling that we're going to blow through those expectations in the days to come and in the early states. And so I'm not going to level set and say we need to be a particular number in these states, but I will say we need to surprise people, and we will surprise people.
What's a surprise?
Well, I think that the press is going to generally underestimate us, and so I'll leave it to you, the people in the press, to decide what would be an outperformance from my campaign. But I'm very confident that we are going to easily exceed whatever expectations the press sets.
And what concern do you have? I mean, not to bring up Bloomberg again, but he did say that the current field, he doesn't feel his positions well enough to defeat Donald Trump. Do you agree that those who are at the top, so-called, of the poll right now are unable or would be unable to defeat Trump, or would have far more difficulty?
Donald Trump's going to have a number of advantages in the general election. He's the sitting president, so he's got a bully pulpit. He's going to start out with a massive financial advantage of hundreds of millions of dollars. He's got a base that will support him through thick and thin. And so anyone who thinks that it's going to be a slam dunk to defeat him in the general election in 2020 isn't seeing what's ahead. Mike is entitled to his opinion about what the field's relative strengths and weaknesses are. I certainly think that Mike has a lot to offer as a candidate. The numbers right now suggest to me, as they do to most objective observers, that it's going to be a tough battle in the general election in 2020.
Regardless of whether it's a, whether Democratic, Socialist, or far progressive, or someone who portrays himself as more moderate. I mean, who has the best chance, I guess? What kind of Democrat has the best chance?
Yeah, the best candidate will be a candidate that can appeal to Americans on both sides of the aisle. And my campaign is attracting tens of thousands of disaffected Donald Trump voters, as well as independents and libertarians. I think Hillary won by 3,000 votes, so it's like, right down the middle, and I win by 8 points here. So if you ask me who the best candidate is to take on Donald Trump in the general election, you're looking at it. And most Democrats have one criteria for the nominee. The top criteria is who can best defeat Donald Trump. I am the candidate that's best positioned to beat Donald Trump in the general election. The voters here in New Hampshire are realizing that. That's one reason my poll numbers are rising. And Democrats in Iowa and around the country are realizing it as well.
You've proposed a number of election reforms, including lowering.
But I do believe that we should lower the voting age because it would turn every high school into a hotbed of political activity. Right now, if you look at high schools, most of the people in that school can't vote, and so it's not that cool to talk about politics, and you have a handful of seniors who maybe can participate. And the seniors are at that point checked out of high school. It's not like they're there. So if you were to lower the voting age to 16, all of a sudden all the juniors and seniors could vote. And then again, studies have shown that the earlier your first vote is, the more likely you are to be a consistent voter over time. So this would make every high school a political hotbed. It would make our democracy much stronger and more vibrant because people would become more consistent voters younger. If you're 16 years old and working, you pay taxes. So if you can pay taxes, you ought to have a say in where those taxes go. So to me, activating young people has many virtues and really not many drawbacks. But as you suggest, that's something that you'd have to get the American people to agree on. In our legislative process.
Let me take one more question, because then we got to go down to the visitor center, and we got the folks that are very cold, waiting in the plaza outside.
Really?
We'll be there right
It's not
after.
just, hear that? It's not just the crowd indoors. There's the overflow crowd outdoors. You can feel the energy here.
Yang Yang
In
showing
New
up.
Hampshire. Yang Yang.
There you go.
I don't know what the other candidates groups have looked like.
On the way. Mr. Yang, you haven't, I'm sorry. You haven't always had this much media attention and this many supporters outside. Just sort of sitting here now, signing this paperwork, being here, how do you feel? Is this a pinch me moment?
It feels great. It feels like a confirmation of all of the hard work that my team has done, that the Yang Gang has done over the last number of weeks and months. What you're seeing today is proof that our democracy still works. The fact is that most Americans look up and they see our government as a series of pipes that are clogged full of money, clogged full of lobbyist cash, and they look up and they say that they can't do anything about it. And they are generally right. That is the magic of New Hampshire, that you can do something about it. You all can flush the pipes clean of lobbyist cash by bringing in someone who has zero corporate PAC money, is raising millions of dollars in increments of only $30 each, and is running a completely grassroots funded campaign. So to the extent that today is a celebration, it's a celebration of this movement and of all the incredible hardworking citizens who've donated $5, $10, $20, $25, $30 to this campaign to make today possible.
What about the lack of representation? Sorry, we got to get down to the cold. What about the lack of representation in New Hampshire when it comes to ethnic groups?
No,
That'd be great.
Let's rock and roll.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congrats.
thank you all.
Thanks very much.
WMUR.